The ship was quiet now. The guns had stopped firing hours ago, but Commander Daniel Cruz could still hear them in his head. He stood on the bridge of the battleship Endurance and looked out at the darkness of space. Broken ships floated past the window. Some of them were human. Most of them were not. The Vektari had come to destroy Earth. They had failed. Daniel was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had not slept in 3 days. His uniform was dirty and torn. There was dried blood on his sleeve, but it was not his blood. It belonged to a young officer who had died in his arms during the battle. "Sir, all enemy ships have been destroyed," said Lieutenant Amy Vance. She sat at the tactical station, her fingers moving across the controls. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and a scar on her chin from an old fight. "The battle is over." Daniel nodded slowly. He should have felt happy. He should have felt proud. But all he felt was empty. The war against the Vektari had lasted 8 months. They were an insect-like race from a distant part of the galaxy. No one knew why they had come to Earth. They never talked. They never negotiated. They just killed. The first attack had been on a small colony on Mars. 3,000 people died in one night. Then they hit the mining stations near Jupiter. Then the spaceports above Earth. Millions of lives lost in a matter of weeks. Earth had fought back. Every nation on the planet had put aside their differences and built a fleet. 200 ships, carrying the best soldiers and the most advanced weapons humanity could create. It was the largest military force in human history. And now, 43 ships remained. "Get me a damage report from all surviving vessels," Daniel said. His voice was hoarse. He needed water. He needed rest. But there was too much work to do. Kevin Park, the communications officer, worked at his station. He was a small man with glasses and quick hands. "Sir, I am receiving reports now. The carrier Resolute is gone. The destroyer screen lost 18 ships. Admiral Keene is confirmed dead." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Patricia Keene had been his friend for 20 years. They had gone to the academy together. She had been at his wedding. She had held his hand at his wife's funeral. Now she was gone too. "That makes me the senior officer," Daniel said quietly. "Yes, sir," Amy replied. "You are now in command of what remains of Earth's fleet." Daniel turned away from the window and looked at his crew. There were 12 people on the bridge. All of them looked exhausted. All of them looked scared. But they were still at their stations, still doing their jobs. "What is the status of Earth's orbital defense grid?" he asked. A young woman named Lisa Cole checked her screens. She was the newest member of the crew, fresh out of training just 6 months ago. The battle had aged her. There was a hardness in her eyes that had not been there before. "The grid took heavy damage, sir. About 60% is still working. Engineering teams are already starting repairs." "Good. What about the ground batteries?" "All operational. The Vektari never got close enough to hit them." Daniel allowed himself a small breath of relief. At least Earth itself was safe. The cities were intact. The people were alive. That was something. "Sir," Kevin said, "I am picking up transmissions from the surface. News broadcasts. People are celebrating in the streets. They think we won." Amy let out a short laugh. It was not a happy sound. "We did win. Did we not?" Daniel looked at her. "We survived." "I am not sure that is the same thing." He walked to the center of the bridge and sat down in the command chair. It had belonged to Captain Rodriguez before a Vektari missile had torn through the hull and taken him with it. Daniel had been the first officer. Now he was the captain. He had not wanted this job. He had never wanted to lead, but sometimes life did not ask what you wanted. "Begin recovery operations," he ordered. "I want search and rescue teams looking for survivors in the debris field." Contact the medical ships and tell them to prepare for casualties. And someone please find me a cup of coffee." A few people smiled at that. It was a weak joke, but it was something human in the middle of all this death. Lieutenant Vance stood up from her station and walked over to him. She spoke quietly so that the others could not hear. "Sir, what do we do now? The fleet is broken. We have barely any ships left. If the Victari come back—" "They will not come back," Daniel said. "We destroyed their entire fleet. But where did they come from? They had to have a homeworld somewhere. A base of operations. What if there are more of them?" Daniel had been thinking the same thing. The Victari had attacked Earth with almost 100 ships. That was a massive force. No species would send their entire military on a single mission. There had to be more out there, somewhere in the darkness between the stars. But he could not say that to his crew. Not now. They needed hope, not fear. "One problem at a time," he said. "Right now, we focus on the living. We save who we can save. We fix what we can fix. The rest can wait." Amy nodded, but she did not look convinced. She returned to her station and began coordinating the rescue efforts. Daniel leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere below him, 8 billion people were celebrating a victory that felt hollow. They were dancing in the streets, hugging their families, crying with relief. They did not know how close they had come to extinction. They did not know how many good men and women had died to give them this moment. And they did not know that Daniel Cruz, the hero of the Battle of Earth, was sitting alone on a broken ship, wondering if any of it had been worth it. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft beep from the navigation console. He looked over and saw a young officer named Tony Reeves frowning at his screens. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "Probably nothing, sir. Just some strange readings from the outer solar system. Solar interference, most likely. Keep an eye on it." "Yes, sir." Daniel turned back to the window. The debris field was slowly spreading, the wreckage of 2 fleets mixing together in the cold vacuum. In a few years, it would form a ring around Earth. A permanent reminder of what had happened here. He thought about his daughter, Emma. She was 16 years old and living with her grandmother in Ohio. He had not spoken to her in weeks. He should call her. He should tell her that he was alive, that he was coming home, but something held him back. A feeling in his gut that he could not explain. A sense that this was not over, that the worst was still to come. "Sir?" Kevin said. "I have Admiral Keene's final transmission. It was recorded just before her ship was destroyed. Do you want to hear it?" Daniel hesitated. Then he nodded. Patricia single quotes as voice filled the bridge, calm and steady, even as her ship burned around her. "Daniel, if you are hearing this, then I am gone and you are in command. Do not feel sorry for me. I knew the risks when I signed up. We all did. Just promise me one thing. Whatever happens next, do not give up. Humans are stubborn. It is our greatest strength. So be stubborn, old friend. Be stubborn until the very end." The transmission ended. Daniel sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood up and faced his crew. "You heard the Admiral. We have work to do. Let us get to it." Outside the window, the stars continued to burn in the endless dark. And somewhere out there, something was watching. Something was waiting. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. 6 hours had passed since the last Victari ship had exploded. On Earth, people were still celebrating. News reports showed crowds filling the streets of New York, London, Tokyo, and 100 other cities. Children waved flags. Old men cried. Strangers hugged each other like family. They did not know what was coming. Commander Daniel Cruz had not left the bridge of the Endurance. He had tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the dead. So he stayed awake, drinking bad coffee and watching the repair crews work through the VIEWPORT. Lieutenant Amy Vance had gone to the medical bay to check on the wounded. Kevin Park was still at his communication station, monitoring the endless stream of messages from Earth. Everyone wanted to talk to the hero of the battle. Politicians, reporters, celebrities. Daniel ignored them all. "Sir," said Tony Reeves from the navigation console. "Those strange readings I mentioned earlier, they are getting stronger." Daniel walked over to look at the screen. A cluster of red dots was forming near the edge of the display, far beyond the orbit of Mars. "What am I looking at?" "I'm not sure, sir. The sensors are picking up some kind of energy signature. It could be natural. A solar flare reflecting off an asteroid field, maybe. But what?" Tony looked up at him with worried eyes. "But it looks like hyperspace distortion. The same kind of signature the Vectari ships made when they arrived." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Are you sure?" "No, sir. The readings are unclear at this distance. It could be nothing, or it could be everything." Daniel turned to Kevin. "Contact the observatory on Luna Station. Tell them to point their telescopes at these coordinates. I want to know what we are dealing with." "Yes, sir." Daniel returned to his command chair and sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. He told himself it was just the coffee. Too much caffeine. Not enough sleep. That was all. But deep down, he knew. He had known since the moment the last Vectari ship died. It had been too easy. A race that could cross the galaxy, that could build ships powerful enough to threaten Earth, would not put all their forces in one fleet. There had to be more. The minutes crawled by. Daniel watched the clock on the wall and tried not to think about what it would mean if Tony was right. 43 ships against another invasion. They would not last an hour. "Sir," Kevin said, his voice strange and tight. "Luna Station is responding. They are sending visual data now." The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of the tactical display, it now showed an image from the Luna telescopes. At first, Daniel could not understand what he was seeing. Just darkness and stars. Then he noticed the distortion at the center of the image. A ripple in space itself, like heat rising from hot pavement. And through that ripple, shapes were emerging. "Oh God," Amy whispered. She had returned to the bridge without Daniel noticing. "How many are there?" Kevin was counting. His face was pale, his hands trembling as they moved across his console. 50 contacts. No, wait, 100. 200. He stopped and looked at Daniel with terror in his eyes. "Sir, there are over 300 enemy ships. More are still coming through." The bridge fell silent. Daniel stared at the screen, watching the Vectari reinforcement fleet pour through the hyperspace tier like ants from a broken nest. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains. Carriers swarming with fighters. Cruisers and destroyers in numbers that made their first invasion look like a scouting party. "They were testing us," Amy said quietly. "The first fleet was just a test. They wanted to see how we would fight. And now they know," Daniel replied. "They know our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses. And they are coming back with everything they have." Tony Reeves was running calculations on his console. At their current speed, the enemy fleet will reach Earth in approximately 6 hours. Maybe less if they accelerate. 6 hours. Daniel had 6 hours to prepare a defense against an army that outnumbered his ships 10 to 1. 6 hours to save 8 billion people from extinction. He thought about Emma again. About her smile, her laugh, the way she rolled her eyes when he tried to make jokes. She was probably watching the news right now, probably celebrating with her friends. She had no idea that her father was about to fight an impossible battle. "Sir, what do we do?" Kevin asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Daniel stood up. His legs felt weak. but he forced himself to stand straight. A commander could not show fear, not when his people needed him to be strong. "Open a channel to all ships," he said. "Channel open, sir." Daniel took a deep breath. He had never been good at speeches. Patricia Keene had always handled that part. She had a gift for finding the right words at the right time. But Patricia was dead, and there was no one left but him. "All ships, this is Commander Cruz. By now you have seen the sensor readings. You know what is coming. I am not going to lie to you. The odds are bad. They have more ships, more guns, more everything. By all logic, we should run. We should scatter into the darkness and hope they do not follow." He paused, looking at his crew. Amy was watching him with fierce determination. Kevin had tears on his cheeks, but his jaw was set. Even young Tony Reeves, who had been so scared moments ago, was sitting up straighter. "But we are not going to run. We are going to fight. Not because we think we can win. Not because we have some secret weapon or clever plan. We are going to fight because down there, on that blue planet, 8 billion people are counting on us. Our families. Our friends. People we have never met and never will. They are looking up at the sky right now, and they are trusting us to keep them safe." Daniel's voice grew stronger as he spoke. The fear was still there, but something else was rising alongside it. Something old and stubborn and very, very human. "I know you are tired. I know you are scared. I am too. But I also know this. Humans do not know how to quit. It is not in our blood. When they knocked us down, we got back up. When they burned our cities, we rebuilt them. When they killed our friends, we honored their memory by fighting harder. That is who we are. That is what we do." He thought of Patricia's last words. "Be stubborn until the very end." So here is what is going to happen. We are going to form up and meet the enemy head on. We are going to make them pay for every inch of space they take. We are going to fight with everything we have. And when we have nothing left, we are going to fight with our bare hands. And maybe we will lose. Maybe this is the end. But if it is, then let it be an end that the galaxy remembers. Let it be an end that makes the Victari think twice before attacking another world. Let it be an end worthy of the human race. He stopped and looked out at the stars. "All ships, prepare for combat. We move out in 1 hour. Cruise out." The channel closed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Amy Vance stepped forward and saluted. "It has been an honor serving with you, sir." Daniel returned the salute. "The honor is mine, Lieutenant. Now let us go show these bugs what happens when they mess with Earth." All across the battered fleet, crews who had been ready to give up found new strength. Engineers worked faster. Gunners loaded their weapons. Pilots strapped themselves into cockpits that might become their coffins. On Earth, the celebration stopped. The news had broken. People gathered around screens, watching the censored data, watching the impossible numbers. Some cried. Some prayed. Some just held their loved ones close and waited and on the bridge of the Endurance. Commander Daniel Cruz watched the enemy fleet approach and made a silent promise to his daughter. "I will not let them take your future. I will not let them take your world. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, I will stop them, or I will die trying." The clock on the wall continued to count down. 5 hours and 53 minutes until the end of the world. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within minutes, everyone knew. The Victari were coming back. The fleet that had saved them was broken. And this time, there would be no miracle victory. In Denver, Colorado, a 62-year-old man named Gregory Marshall sat in his living room and watched Commander Cruz give his speech. Greg had been a fighter pilot in his youth. He had flown combat missions in 3 different wars before retiring to raise his grandchildren. His flying days were supposed to be over. He watched the commander talk about fighting until the end. He watched the sensor images showing 300 enemy ships. And something inside him stirred. Something old and fierce. Greg picked up his phone and made a call. "Charlie?" "It is, Greg. How fast can you get the old shuttle running?" In Houston, Texas, a woman named Linda Torres was already at mission control. She had worked for the space program for 30 years. She knew every rocket, every shuttle, every piece of hardware that could reach orbit. And she knew that Earth had more ships than just a military fleet. "Get me a list of every civilian vessel capable of leaving atmosphere," she told her team. "Cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger shuttles, everything. I do not care if it is held together with tape and prayers. If it can fly, I want it in the air. Ma'am, most of these ships have no weapons. Then we will give them weapons. Contact every military base on the planet. Tell them to start loading missiles onto anything with wings." In Seattle, a young software developer named Marcus Webb gathered his team around a conference table. They had been working on satellite communication systems, civilian stuff, nothing military. But Marcus had an idea. "The Victari use a centralized targeting system," he said, pulling up diagrams on his laptop. "Their ships share data in real time. It makes them accurate, but it also makes them vulnerable. If we can hack into their network, even for a few seconds, we can blind them. How do we do that?" asked his colleague Jennifer Blake. "We do not hack them directly. We overload them. Every satellite in orbit is basically a radio transmitter. If we can reprogram them all to broadcast garbage data on the Victari frequencies, we might be able to jam their communications." "That is insane," Jennifer said. "Yes, but it might work." All across the planet, ordinary people were making extraordinary choices. A retired general named Frank Patterson drove to the nearest airbase and demanded to be put back in command. A teenage hacker named Sophie Lee broke into classified military networks and started distributing enemy ship schematics to anyone who could use them. A group of factory workers in Detroit began converting their machines to produce ammunition, working through the night without pay or rest. And in orbit, aboard the cargo ship Santa Maria, a 50-year-old woman named Betty Richardson heard Commander Cruz's speech and made her own decision. Betty had been hauling freight between Earth and the lunar colonies for 20 years. Her ship was old and slow. It had no weapons, no armor, nothing but a big empty cargo hold and engines that barely worked. She had been planning to retire next year, buy a little house by the ocean, spend her days fishing. But that was before the Victari came. "Larry," she said to her co-pilot, a young man with red hair and freckles, "how much mining explosive do we have in the hold?" Larry checked his manifest. "About 40 tons. We were supposed to deliver it to the asteroid miners next week. Change of plans. We are going to deliver it to the Victari instead." "Betty, that is crazy. This ship was not built for combat." "Neither were we. But here we are." She opened a channel to the other civilian ships in the area. "Attention all vessels. This is Betty Richardson of the Santa Maria. I know you are scared. I am scared too. But right now, our boys and girls in the Navy are getting ready to die for us. The least we can do is stand with them." Responses came flooding in. The cargo ship Golden Eagle, the passenger liner Northern Star, a fleet of mining vessels from the asteroid belt, even a converted school bus that some crazy teacher had turned into a space tourism vehicle. Within 2 hours, over 300 civilian ships had volunteered to join the fight on the Endurance. Commander Daniel Cruz watched the tactical display with growing amazement. New contacts were appearing everywhere. Not enemies, allies. "Sir," Kevin Park said, his voice full of wonder, "I am receiving transmissions from civilian ships. They are asking for orders. Daniel did not know what to say. These were not soldiers. They were truck drivers and teachers and factory workers. Their ships had no armor, no shields, nothing but courage and desperation. "Tell them to fall back," he said. "This is not their fight." "With respect, sir," Amy Vance said, "I do not think they are going to listen." She was right. A moment later, a voice crackled over the communication system. It was Betty Richardson. "Commander Cruz, this is the Santa Maria. I have got 40 tons of explosives and a crew of dock workers who have never fired a gun in their lives. Point is at something that needs blowing up." Daniel almost laughed. It was absurd. It was beautiful. It was so very human. "Betty, this is Cruz. You and your people are insane." "Yes, sir." "So what are your orders?" Before Daniel could answer, another voice joined the channel. "Commander Cruz, this is Colonel Samuel Wright of the Mars Defense Force. 37 ships from the Martian colonies reporting for duty. We are 3 hours out and coming in hot." Then another voice. "Commander, this is Captain Rosa Delgado from Europa Station. 12 ships from the Jupiter colonies. Small but mean. Where do you need us?" And another. And another. From every corner of the solar system, humans were answering the call. Not because they thought they could win. Not because someone ordered them to. But because they refused to let their species die without a fight. Daniel stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by the voices of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And for the first time since the battle began, he felt something like hope. "All right," he said. "New plan. Everyone listen up." He walked to the tactical display and began marking positions. The military ships would form the front line, drawing the enemy's fire. The civilian vessels would hang back, using their cargo holds full of explosives and mining equipment as improvised weapons. The colonial fleets would hit the enemy flanks when they were committed to the main attack. It was not a good plan. It was barely a plan at all. But it was something. "The Vectari expect us to break," Daniel said. "They expect us to scatter and run. Instead, we are going to hit them head on with everything we have. We are going to make so much noise and cause so much chaos that they will not know what is happening. And while they are trying to figure it out, we are going to hurt them. Badly." "Sir," Tony Reeves said, "even with the civilian ships and the colonial fleets, we are still outnumbered 5-1. "I know. But numbers are not everything. The Vectari are insects. They think like insects. They follow patterns. They obey orders. They do what their commanders tell them. We are humans. We improvise. We adapt. We do crazy things that no sane species would ever consider." He looked around at his crew. "Today, we are going to be very crazy indeed." On Earth, people were gathering around screens, watching the impossible unfold. They saw garbage trucks fitted with missile launchers. They saw school buses converted into ramming ships. They saw a fleet of ordinary citizens flying into battle against an alien armada. Some people cried. Some people cheered. Most just watched in stunned silence. In Ohio, a 16-year-old girl named Emma Cruz sat with her grandmother and stared at the television. She knew her father was up there somewhere. She knew he was probably going to die. But she also knew something else. She knew that her father, and everyone flying with him, was about to show the universe what it meant to be human. "Go get them, Dad," she whispered. "Show them what we are made of." And high above, in the cold darkness of space, Daniel Cruz gave the order that would send his ragtag fleet into the fight of their lives. "All ships. This is Commander Cruz. It is time to show these bugs who they are messing with. All units, advance." The Battle of Last Hope had begun. The battle started at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. The Vectari fleet moved like a single organism. 300 ships forming a massive wedge, their weapons charged and ready. They had crushed a dozen other species using this formation. It was designed to overwhelm, to terrify, to end wars before they truly began. They expected the humans to scatter. They expected wrong. Commander Daniel Cruz sat in his command chair on the Endurance, watching the enemy approach on the tactical display. His fleet was spread out before him, a mix of military vessels and civilian ships that had no business being in a war zone. It looked like chaos. It was chaos. And that was exactly the point. All ships, hold position, Daniel ordered. Wait for my signal. The Victari vanguard consisted of 20 cruisers, their hulls covered in sharp angles and strange markings. They were fast and deadly, designed to punch through enemy lines and create openings for the larger ships behind them. They closed to weapons range. 10,000 kilometers. 5,000. 1,000. Now, Daniel said from behind an asteroid field that the Victari had dismissed as irrelevant. A flotilla of garbage scows emerged. These were the refuse haulers from the Lunar Waste Management Authority, led by Captain Paula Hendricks, a woman who had spent 30 years collecting trash and never thought she would use that experience in combat. But trash, she had realized, made an excellent weapon. The haulers opened their massive cargo holds and began launching compressed cubes of debris at incredible speed. The magnetic launches they used to move heavy loads were never designed for combat. They did not need to be. A 10-ton cube of compacted metal traveling at 3 kilometers per second did not care about design specifications. The Victari shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. Lasers, plasma, particle beams. They had never encountered anything like this. The first cube hit a Victari cruiser amidships and punched straight through, tearing the ship in half. The second and third cubes claimed 2 more ships before the aliens even understood what was happening. By the time they started evasive maneuvers, 7 of their Vanguard cruisers were dead. That is for making us work on a holiday. Paula Hendricks shouted over the communication channel, but the Victari were fast learners. Their remaining ships adjusted formation, spreading out to make the debris attacks less effective. The main fleet continued forward, their dreadnoughts powering up weapons that could crack planets. Daniel had expected this. Phase 2, he ordered. The civilian ships surged forward. Not in formation, not following any tactical doctrine, just a swarm of desperate humans in whatever vessels they could find. Mining ships launched their drilling equipment as improvised missiles. Cargo haulers rammed enemy fighters, sacrificing themselves to take out as many enemies as possible. Even the converted school bus, piloted by a former race car driver named Derek Stone, managed to destroy an entire squadron of Victari interceptors before being blown apart. Derek and his passengers ejected at the last moment, their escape pods tumbling through the chaos. "This is Derek Stone." His voice crackled over the radio. "Someone pick us up. We want to do that again." On Earth, people watched in amazement. This was not a battle. It was madness. Glorious, ridiculous human madness. In Seattle, Marcus Webb and his team finished uploading their jamming program to every satellite in orbit. With a single keystroke, they activated it. Suddenly, every piece of communications equipment in the solar system began broadcasting garbage data on Victari frequencies. The effect was immediate. Enemy ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly became confused. Some fired on each other. Others stopped moving entirely, their commanders unable to send or receive orders. "It is working," Marcus shouted. "We bought them time." But time was running out. The Victari flagship was a massive vessel, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. It pushed through the chaos of the battle, ignoring the smaller ships, heading straight for the Endurance. The alien commander had identified Daniel as the human leader. Killing him would break the defense. "Sir," Amy Vance said, her voice tight with fear. "The flagship is targeting us." Daniel could see it on the display. The massive ship was charging its main weapon, a beam powerful enough to destroy a moon. They had maybe 2 minutes before it fired. "What do we have left?" he asked. Amy checked their console. "Forward batteries at 12%. No missiles. We have 1 nuclear warhead in the magazine, but the launcher is offline. 1 nuclear warhead. One chance." Daniel made his decision in an instant. "Helm, set a collision course with the flagship." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. "Sir," Kevin Park said, his voice breaking, "you cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. If we can get close enough, we can detonate the warhead manually. It will take out the flagship and buy the fleet time to regroup. It will kill us all." "Yes, it will." Daniel looked around at his crew. These people had followed him into hell. They had fought beside him, bled beside him, never once complained or asked for special treatment. They deserved better than this, but there was no better option. "All hands, this is the commander. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. That is an order. No one moved. Did you not hear me? I said abandon ship." Amy Vance stood up from her station and walked over to him. There were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "Sir, with respect, we are not going anywhere. Lieutenant, this is not a request. And we are not leaving. You said it yourself. Humans do not know how to quit. Well, neither do we." She looked back at the rest of the crew. They were all nodding, all standing by their stations, all refusing to leave. Kevin Park spoke up. "It has been an honor serving with you, Commander. But we are seeing this through to the end. Together." Daniel felt something break inside him. Something warm and painful and deeply human. "You are all insane," he said. "We learned from the best," Amy replied. The Endurance accelerated toward the Vektari flagship, its engines burning beyond safe limits. Around them, the battle raged on. Human ships were dying by the dozens, but they were taking Vektari with them. The aliens had never faced anything like this, an enemy that refused to surrender, that kept fighting even when all hope was lost. The flagship loomed larger in the viewport. Its main weapon was almost fully charged. 30 seconds until it fired. 20 seconds. 10. Daniel reached for the manual detonation controls. One press of a button and it would all be over. He thought about Emma, about her smile, about all the years he would miss. He thought about his crew, these brave men and women who had chosen to die beside him. He thought about humanity, about everything they had built and dreamed and hoped for. "Goodbye, Emma," he whispered. "I love you." His finger touched the button. And then the sky tore open. A flash of light brighter than the sun filled the viewport. For a moment, Daniel thought the flagship had fired. He thought he was dead, but he was not dead. He was staring at something impossible. Behind the Vektari fleet, a massive rupture had appeared in space. Not like the one the Vektari used. This was different, larger, more elegant. And through it, ships were emerging, ships unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. They were silver, smooth, beautiful in a way that human technology could never match. They moved with impossible grace, sliding through space like fish through water. There were dozens of them, each one larger than the biggest Vektari dreadnought. "Sir," Kevin said, his voice barely a whisper, "we have new contacts. Unknown configuration. They are targeting the Vektari." The silver ships opened fire. Beams of pure white light lanced through the enemy formation, cutting through shields and armor like they were made of paper. Vektari ships exploded by the dozens, then by the hundreds. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Daniel watched in stunned silence as the alien reinforcements, methodically destroyed every Vectari ship in the system. The flagship that had been about to kill them vanished in a flash of light, vaporized by a single shot. The battle was over. Humanity had been saved. But by whom? The silence that followed the battle was the loudest thing Daniel Cruz had ever heard. On the bridge of the Endurance, no one moved. No one spoke. They just stared at the viewport, watching the silver ships drift through the debris field like ghosts. The Vectari fleet was gone. 300 warships, the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen, reduced to scattered atoms in less than 10 minutes. "Sir," Kevin Park said, his voice trembling, "we are being hailed." Audio only. Daniel nodded slowly. He did not trust his voice to speak. The sound that came through the speakers was unlike anything human. It was musical, almost like singing, but there was a mechanical quality underneath. A voice that was ancient and artificial all at once. "Humans of Earth," it said, "we have observed your conflict." Daniel found his voice. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" "We are old," the voice replied. "Older than your species. Older than the Vectari. We have watched the galaxy for millions of years, seen empires rise and fall, civilizations bloom and die. We do not involve ourselves in the affairs of younger races. This has been our way since before your son was born." Lieutenant Amy Vance stepped forward. "Then why did you help us?" There was a pause. When the voice returned, it seemed almost confused, as if the beings behind it were struggling to explain something they did not fully understand themselves. "We have observed many species face extinction. It is the natural order of things. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is how the universe works." The voice paused again. "But you are different. You were beaten. Your fleet was destroyed. Your world was defenseless. By every measure, you should have surrendered. You should have fled. You should have begged for mercy. Instead, you charged forward with garbage trucks and school buses. Your civilians flew into battle with mining explosives. Your wounded crawled back to their stations. Your leader aimed his dying ship at the enemy's heart, knowing he would never see home again." Daniel thought about Betty Richardson and her 40 tons of explosives, about Derek Stone and his ridiculous school bus, about Paula Hendricks and her garbage fleet, about all the ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. "We have watched 1,000 species die," the voice continued. "And in all that time, we have never seen anything like this. Never seen a race fight so hard for each other. Not for territory. Not for resources. Not for power. Just for each other." The largest of the silver ships drifted closer to the Endurance. Up close, Daniel could see strange patterns on its hull. They looked almost like writing, but in a language no human could read. "We do not understand you," the voice admitted. "Your biology is primitive. Your technology is crude. Your lifespans are brief. By all logical measures, you should be insignificant. But," Amy asked, "but you are not insignificant. You are magnificent. You fight for love, not conquest. You die for strangers, not glory. You keep fighting when all hope is lost, not because you think you will win, but because you cannot imagine giving up." The voice grew softer, almost sad. "We are old. We are tired. We have seen too much death, too much cruelty, too much pointless destruction. We had forgotten that courage existed. That sacrifice meant something. That a species could be worth saving." Daniel stepped toward the viewport, staring at the massive silver ship. "What happens now? Are you going to stay? Help us rebuild?" "No, our time in this galaxy is ending. We are leaving, traveling to a place beyond your understanding. But before we go, we will ensure that the Vectari Dominion never threatens your world again." Consider it a gift. A thank you for reminding us what it means to be alive. Wait, Daniel said. We do not even know your name. We do not know anything about you. You do not need to know. What matters is that you remember this day. Remember what you did. Remember that when the darkness came, you did not run. You stood together. You fought together. You reminded the universe why life is precious. The silver ships began to move, drifting toward the hyperspace rupture that still hung in the distance. One more thing, the voice said. Your galaxy is vast. There are many other species out there, some friendly, some dangerous. In time, you will meet them. When you do, remember what we told you. The galaxy will be watching. They will see what you are made of. And what are we made of? Daniel asked. That is for you to decide. But if today is any indication, I believe the galaxy has much to fear from humanity, and much to hope for. The transmission ended. The silver ships accelerated toward the rupture, moving faster than anything Daniel had ever seen. One by one, they vanished into the light. The largest ship was the last to go. It paused at the edge of the rupture, and Daniel could have sworn he saw a flash of something from its hull. A signal. A farewell. Then it was gone. The rupture closed behind them, leaving nothing but stars. On the bridge of the Endurance, the crew stood in stunned silence. They had been seconds from death. Now they were alive, and the enemy that had threatened to destroy them was gone forever. Sir, Kevin said quietly, I am receiving transmissions from Earth. People are asking what happened. They want to know if we won. Daniel looked around at his crew. At Amy, who had refused to abandon him. At Kevin, who had stayed at his post even when death seemed certain. At all the brave men and women who had been willing to die for their species. He thought about Betty Richardson and her coffee maker. About the garbage fleet and the school bus. About all the ordinary heroes who had answered the call. Open a channel, he said. Channel open, sir. Daniel took a deep breath. He had never been good at speeches. But some things needed to be said. People of Earth, this is Commander Daniel Cruz. I am happy to report that the Vectari threat has been eliminated. We had some unexpected help from friends we did not know we had. But that is not what I want to talk about. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What happened today was a miracle. Not because of the beings who saved us, but because of you. All of you. When the darkness came, you did not hide. You did not run. You flew into battle with whatever you could find. Cargo ships and garbage trucks. Mining vessels and school buses. You knew you were probably gonna die, and you came anyway. His voice grew stronger. I have spent my whole life in the military. I have seen soldiers do brave things, but I have never seen anything like what I saw today. Ordinary people becoming heroes. Civilians fighting alongside soldiers. A whole species standing together, refusing to surrender, refusing to give up. He looked out at the stars. The beings who saved us said they were watching. They said the galaxy would see what we are made of. Well, today they saw. I hope they were paying attention, because humanity is not going anywhere. We are stubborn. We are crazy. And we take care of our own. On Earth, millions of people listened. In cities and villages, in homes and hospitals, in shelters where they had hidden from the attack. They listened to the commander's words, and something changed inside them. Fear became pride. Despair became hope. They had faced the end of the world and survived. Not because they were lucky, because they were human. Go home, Daniel said. Hug your families. Rest. Recover. Because tomorrow we have work to do. We have ships to rebuild and wounds to heal. We have a solar system to protect and a galaxy to explore. The universe is bigger than we ever imagined, and we are going to face it together. He smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Commander Cruz out. The channel closed. On the bridge, Amy Vance walked over to him with something in her hand. A cup of coffee. It was cold and probably terrible, but it was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. "Betty Richardson dropped this off before the battle," Amy said. "She said you might need it." Daniel took the cup and raised it in a silent toast to the stars. "Thank you, Betty," he said quietly. "Thank you, everyone." 6 months later, Commander Daniel Cruz stood before the United Nations General Assembly and received humanity's highest honor. But he did not accept it for himself. He accepted it for every person who had fought in the Battle of Last Hope, for the soldiers and the civilians, for the living and the dead. In his speech, he spoke about courage and sacrifice, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about a species that refused to give up, even when all hope was lost. He spoke about Betty Richardson, who now ran a coffee shop near the spaceport, about Derek Stone, who had become a hero to children everywhere, about Paula Hendricks and her garbage fleet, now immortalized in a dozen movies and songs. And he spoke about the silver ships, the ancient beings who had seen something in humanity worth saving. "We do not know who they were," Daniel said. "We may never know. But they taught us something important. They taught us that the galaxy is watching. And what they see when they look at us is not our technology or our weapons. They see our spirit, our stubborn, crazy, beautiful spirit." He looked out at the assembled delegates, at the cameras broadcasting his words to every corner of the planet. "So let us give them something worth watching. Let us build a future worthy of the people who died to protect it. Let us explore the stars with courage and kindness. Let us be the species that stands up for others, the way others stood up for us." He raised his hand in salute. "Humanity, first and forever." The applause started slowly, then built to a roar that shook the walls. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of human telescopes, a silver light,